And we're back with another episode. I'm your host, Stephen Rochester, and today we have a very special guest. I watched this gentleman, take over the marketing space and the promotional space since I was, coming up as a young whippersnapper, as they would say. Mr. Bryan Brock, thank you for coming on today, man. How you doing?
Yo, thank you for having me. I'm good.
Yes, sir. You know what? It's crazy because I'm doing this new series and I'm bringing on professionals and people in the industry that are doing at a pretty high level. And I had you in mind for probably over 10 years. I've watched you, from One Love T.O. I'm not sure if a lot of people know the people behind the brands. But I've watched you and your partners do crazy things in the city of Toronto for so many years at a very high level. So I'm just excited to have you on and kind of pick your brain and shoot the shit with you a little bit, man. So thank you for joining me today, brother.
Let's do it.
Question for you, just to kind of jump into it. What do you do? What do you do for people that don't know?
Sure. It's a loaded question.
Super loaded because you do a lot of things,
yeah.
Right?
So I think the easiest thing would be to just say at this point, I am a mentor and someone who looks to empower and help young people that are in the creative space that maybe have challenges and don't know how to overcome those challenges on their own.
Right.
So that's like maybe the first entry point for like who I am or what I do. But based off of that, my background comes from a design background and an arts background. And so for many years, I've been kind of known as maybe a graphic designer or creative director. But then when you kind of start to unfold all the layers, I've been in the music space, I've designed in the fashion space, I've done...
you've been in magazines,
magazines, I've been in the radio space, I've been...
all things media, really.
Yeah, marketing, promotion, events, I've never really been stuck to one thing. So it's always like a loaded question. How do you answer? What do you do? But that's like a...
So they say a jack of all trades is a master of none, right? Do you believe in that saying? Because outside looking in, if you don't necessarily know, like you think that you do a lot of things. What do you specialize in?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
So I think there's truth to that, but I also think it depends on who you're talking about. So, a long time ago, someone that I respect in the industry said, all you got to do is pick one thing and like it'll happen for you. And I was like, but it's already happening for me, and I do like 20 things. And it wasn't like to say that what they were proposing is wrong. It's just that I'm the type of person that's very interested in a lot of different things. I'm passionate about a lot of different things.
You want to try a couple of things, fail at it, maybe see if you like it or not.
Yeah, I'm okay with trying and failing or trying and succeeding. But to me, prior to like this era of my life, there was no value in sticking to one thing. And I think people like Virgil have shown that you don't need to do that.
Yeah, R.I.P. Virgil.
Yeah, like he, rest in peace, obviously, but he laid the foundation of like what young people can now look at as an example of someone who's interested in music, who's interested in fashion, who's interested in architecture. Arts. Like it's possible. Yeah. And I think just when I was starting out, there was no examples of it, if it was possible or not.
Right. So backstory, graphic designer, you started off, I don't know if a lot of people know, One Love T.O., your partner and yourself, that was a brainchild, right? That was the campaign of Toronto's summers and winters, right? Yeah. You guys turned that into business opportunities for yourself. How did that start?
Honestly,
I'm asking selfishly because I've always wanted to sit down with either or of you guys and ask you guys, how did you guys start with this? Like, where did that come from and why?
Yeah, honestly, that was Rex's idea.
Yeah.
Tyrone came up with the idea of One Love, and it was birthed out of the then mayor of Toronto, David Miller, who came to the Remix Project looking for an opportunity to integrate the city of Toronto into Caribana in a more authentic way than just those traditional, city-run floats where the mayor's just waving.
Right.
He was like, how do we do this with like an impact, cultural impact, and actually make something matter? And Tyrone had the idea of One Love, T.O., and then, I think he like sketched out a few things, and I went home literally
being the graphic designer.
Yeah. Right. I went home and like created this logo. We created some like form of like a pitch. And then before you knew it, we actually had a partnership with the city of Toronto for that float. of Caravana.
How old were you guys approximately? Just around that. Just paint me the timeline because again, there's business. It's a business mind that's happening right now. You guys may not understand it at that very moment, but there's things that are happening in the background when you look back at it. Obviously, right?
Totally. I feel like that was probably 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2006, 2007. So, kind of pre-social media. There was not a lot of, at least in Toronto, not a lot of positivity going on. We were still
1000%.
definitely known and characterized as the screwface capital.
Yeah. And that's what I mean because, growing up around, 16 to the 19 age, all you see, especially back then, was, Toronto beefs or all the nonsense. So to see something that would, such a positive vibe come with such an impact, like you guys kind of spread that so fast and everybody was wearing the t-shirts. You see it everywhere. You see posters everywhere. You mentioned the remix projects. How did that play a part in the creation of what you guys created so far?
That was like a hub for everyone and everything at that moment in Toronto. So
what is the Remix Project for those that don't know?
Yeah, so the Remix Project's a nonprofit. It's a charitable organization in the city of Toronto that essentially levels the playing field for young people who either come from disadvantaged neighborhoods, underserved communities, or could be deemed as, the definition of at-risk youth.
Right.
And their goal is essentially to help these young people tap into that talent, that raw talent that they have, and figure out, how do I take that to the next level? Right. Is it formal education? Is it internships, paid opportunities, education, employment, or entrepreneurship? Mm-hmm. And, Remix has been going on for almost 20 years. Right. And the success stories speak for themselves. Wonder Girls out of there, Francis Got Heat as another crazy producer, Jesse Reyes. Mm-hmm. And then you go all the way back to like who was running the program in the beginning. Right. Like that's a brainchild of Gavin and Drex.
Shout out Gavin. Yeah.
And Kende. And they had like OVO 40 running the recording program. So even
all
Rex,
the top talents of our time right now somewhat came out of Remix.
Yeah, there was connections.
Short, right?
So like One Love To was like a very natural thing to be birthed out of that time and that era. Mm. And I think it was just a unique moment for the city of Toronto because there was the movement of One Love To on a very ground level, grassroots. Yeah. But at the same time, like simultaneously, OVO was starting to build. Mm-hmm. And there was just like excitement about what Toronto had to offer the world. And I think
there was finally a platform for us to kind of show our talents.
Yeah, and that's what the blog was for, right? Like that oneloveto.com ended up being one of the biggest blogs of our generation.
I remember.
That shared Toronto talent. Mm-hmm. Like it was everything that like a Now magazine or a Blog TO or a Toronto Star couldn't be because they weren't of the culture or in the culture. They were just a news outlet. Whereas like me, Rex, anyone else that was like affiliated with
We knew you
Remix,
guys in the city.
Yeah, we were doing shit in the city.
Yeah, 1000%.
It was like natural for us to know everyone in different neighborhoods and who was doing what. So it was an amazing time for us to just be proud of where we're from and allow other people to feel like they could be proud as well.
And then you took that momentum, you transitioned it into, promotions and parties and stuff like that, obviously bringing the communities together.
Yeah.
Right? Partnering with, top brands and companies in the industry as well. Like, how did that come about?
So we did.
Why even, want to throw a party now?
Oh, thank you. So throwing parties is like, some people will only look at that as.
And we're talking about nostalgia for those that don't know. One of the best parties in the city, hands down.
Thank you. So, throwing parties, like a lot of people will just look at it as like a way to have fun. Yeah. And for sure, that's a way to unplug for people. But at the same time, for us, it was a way to bring different folks together in a way that celebrated music and history and culture in a way that maybe we weren't used to. Mm. And it also was a diverse audience, like whether it was nostalgia, whether it was shuffle, whether we did tribute.
Well, Toronto in itself is diverse.
Super crazy, diverse, right? And like that was kind of our thing. Like, why aren't there events that we can go to that feel like it's for everyone? Mm-hmm. And those parties really resonated with people. So I think One Love To helped with that. The parties helped with that. And then the people, like we couldn't do this if the people didn't A, accept the ideas and B, have a good time.
Right. And then naturally music gets inserted.
Yeah.
You guys have connections with artists, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Music, clothing, it's just like the culture in itself, it feeds itself, right?
Yeah,
So
100%.
then now you have these artists come out
Yeah.
that makes you guys bigger because you're standing next to these artists, whoever they are, it doesn't matter, right? So like, what's the thought? Are you guys thinking about these things, or is this like, is it planned? Is it calculated, or are they just happening?
I wish we could say we were that smart to be like, yeah, this is all planned.
Like, is this, because you look back and it's crazy the moves that are being made.
Yeah.
But are you guys planning the moves ahead of time? I'm sure you guys are to some extent.
Yeah, there's like ideas that we think we should try and like execute, but you never know what the outcome's going to be, right? And it's in a space where it's like event-based, or in terms of One Love TO from the blog or the clothing, all of the things we were creating weren't things that people needed. They were things that people might want.
Right.
So when you think of that from a business perspective, like there's no guarantee that anything's going to work if no one needs what you've got. It's not a service or a product that you absolutely have to have.
But people need an outlet, so that kind of is a need, right?
It became closer to a need than when we started.
Over time.
Yeah, but when we first started, it was all just a want, you know? So it kind of went, I think the power was in the people. Like it kind of went with whatever people wanted.
Right.
And the feedback was so positive. Like 9 times out of 10, people wanted to be a part of what we were building.
And then now that you guys are taking it from a street level into corporate, obviously right? You know, partnering with American Express, doing those kind of promotions. Like, how do you transition from the parties? Like, is it you showing the numbers to these new companies? Like, how does one, you know, the new guys that are coming up now, you know, they want to transition from, you know, selling their clothes to their friends, to then throwing events, to then getting sponsorship. Like, there's levels to this, right? So how did you get to that level where now you're partnering with you know, American Express for Winterlicious events or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. So I think
like they believe in you.
They do, and they did. Even like that's how all of our partnerships, like Roots Canada, we did stuff with the Raptors, we did stuff with the Blue Jays. All these things happened because we were essentially like the pulse of the city.
Right.
So when you think of, and this is interesting for a young entrepreneur or a young creative to think about, but when you think of these big brands, they have all the money, they have all the access, they have things that we could never think of in terms of resources. Right. But what they don't have is ground level, street level connection.
Right.
They have everything else. And everything else will work in a commercial setting, but that commercial setting doesn't ever trickle down to the street. At least it can, but I mean, in most times it doesn't trickle down to being as
organically.
Authentic. Exactly.
I think that's the word, because we could always spot a fake, right? We could always spot where it doesn't feel too right. You know, some campaigns are like not the best tasteful campaigns because maybe they didn't have someone like Brock or One Love TO or whatever company with their pulse onto the streets, right?
Yeah. So I think that's really what it was, is that they were like, hey, these kids are up to something. Yeah. They've made a lot of noise. They've created things that other young people want that are seemingly quote unquote cool. Right. So how do we tap into that? And that was great for us because it gave a level of validation we didn't know we needed. We were cool with just doing what we did for the people. Yeah. But then when
you guys are building a name for yourself, you're making a little money and you're supporting yourself, you're good.
Yeah.
Right?
And having fun while doing it. But when the brands step to, you know, like we had a dream list of people we would want to work with. And one of those people...
Who's on that list?
I'll give you the one that we worked with for sure, which was Roots Canada.
Right.
And that was like a dream come true, right? Having a streetwear, like not even full streetwear, like I don't even know what you would call One Love TO as a brand in terms of visuals, but regardless, it was a t-shirt brand essentially. And to have someone as big as Roots Canada, who we all grew up on,
everyday wear. I was looking for a word for it. I'm like everyday wear. You wear it every day. You go to the park. You go to the beach.
Yeah, lifestyle, maybe.
Lifestyle, right?
So like for them to approach us and say, "How do we work together?" That was just like undeniable for us. Like that was like, okay, we know we're doing something right. So
not to get into the details of that kind of deal, but what does that kind of deal look like? Is it? And I'm talking financials, right? So is it splits based off of sales for that specific item in multiple stores,
right?
Or like overall, like how does that work?
So they structure deals, and every company's different,
sure.
But they structure deals dependent on what that project is. Right. So for us,
So they have a SKU for that thing.
yeah. And there's different ways about doing it. Like our first project we ever did with them was a collaboration for Canada Day with a One Love TO t-shirt, vintage
Now
tee.
you're repurposing what you guys once started.
Exactly.
Down there 8 years ago or whatever.
Yeah. And then the heart
Crazy,
ended up being
no?
a Canadian flag.
Come
right?
on, man.
and the guy who ended up helping us design that was, which is a full circle moment, was Adrian Atchison from Two Black Guys,
Right.
who was actually the in-house designer for Roots at the time. So
He has a new brand right now, isn't it? He has.
yeah, he does.
What's it called? We'll get back to that, but that's a dope brand too. What's this guy? TG's helping him with that as well.
Okay.
Remember TG, the
of
graphic
course.
designer? Crazy. He's crazy deep. But anyways, go on.
But yeah, all of that was like a full circle moment for us. And then when it comes to the business of it, you can break it down into a lot of different ways. In a collaboration, you could be the person that buys the product at a discounted rate and then gets to resell it and make that profit.
Price it to whatever you want, reasonably, obviously, but whatever.
That's one model. There's another model where you're co-collaborators. So they're not just lending the brand name, but they're in it with you. So there's dual investment, which means dual profits.
Right.
Both people could make money from that.
Right.
And then there's other ways where it could be like a marketing spend from a big company where this is beneficial to them in the big picture. So they spend money on out of their marketing budget to do a collab or whatever.
And then pay for
everything.
Right.
Right. And then whatever's left over, if you're the lucky recipient, great.
Right.
So
So there's multiple ways of doing it.
multiple ways of doing those
Which
deals.
one would you prefer for the featured deals? Out of those three you just gave, which one's the best deal?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think
A better deal. They're not right? Out of the three.
I think the best option is always if a company has a marketing budget that's already been on their line items for the year, and they can pull from that budget to help your project get pushed bigger than you could push it yourself. Why not use those marketing dollars that they've already allotted and push your project, even though it's a collab, push that project forward, and then if the dollar amount,
It's less risk on you.
it's way less risk. You don't have to put up capital.
Yeah.
And they have the machine that's already built. So why not tap into that machine? And then on the back end, if there's profit, cool. If you get all that profit because they're covering costs, great. But even let's say you don't get all the profit and you're just in a position where they're spending their marketing dollars, that's still a win to me because you don't have access to what they do. And that's why you partner with people.
Well, yeah, distribution, fucking storefronts, all these things that, you might have a t-shirt or a logo. I don't have everything
I don't have
else.
a storefront.
I don't have
advertising
I don't want
channels.
those upfront costs or those overhead costs, right? So, no, I totally get it. All right, so then you have these, sponsorships happening. Now, let's talk about the American Express. Like, is it you bringing, the streets to Winterlicious? Like, how does that work now?
Those sorts of things are more about like, once again, this was early on before brands did online, like social media or online budgets. So we were very early in the game with that. And the goal is just similar to like how an advertising or marketing budget would work. It's exposure. So when you buy a billboard, you're looking for X amount of impressions, right? You don't know exactly who's going to see it or activate on that.
Right.
But if you
At
put
some
up a
point,
billboard, people are going to see it.
Something's going to happen.
So One Love TO as a blog or as us going to an event, making an appearance and covering it, those things were just another avenue for brands to use as like marketing or advertising.
Right.
And that's what you see now today with like the influencer world, and people have blown up.
They just want to get in front of the audience.
Yeah.
How can I get in front of them with spending the less amount?
Yeah. And in a more, once again, organic or authentic way.
Right.
And for us, like the things that we partner with were already established things happening in Toronto.
Hell yeah.
So why wouldn't we want to introduce our audience to things that maybe they...
And it's an easy collab.
Yeah. And it's also about like making people feel like it's accessible, right? From One Love TO days till now, there's a large population of Toronto people that feel like certain things aren't for them. And that could be because they don't see other people that look like them in that space, or they've had negative experiences in those spaces.
Yeah.
Me and Rex were always like, yo, the world is literally our oyster. Like, we can do whatever we want. And
The
our
connectors.
people,
You guys are connectors.
yeah, and our people should be able to feel like they could do whatever they want too. So when it comes to like a Winterlicious or whatever the event may be, it doesn't matter where you're from or what you look like or what your bank account is.
You can be involved.
You can be involved and you should be involved.
Right. All right. So now that you have, success in the marketing space, the promotion game, right now you're kind of dabbling into the street photography space, right? More of a passion project that obviously can turn lucrative for yourself at some point too.
Sure.
Right. What made you kind of take a step back and kind of focus on your own craft?
So for like 20 plus years, I've been doing work for
everybody else,
other people.
Yeah.
And as beautiful as that is, it's a blessing to be in those spaces and be paid to be a creative and create for others and bring ideas to life. There's also something that's going to be missing inside of you, your soul as an artist. So me picking up a camera was literally my first attempt at answering.
What was that first camera? What was the first camera Brock picked up and said, I'm going to go hit the streets and take some pictures?
Okay, so this is going to sound crazy. So I did an insane amount of research on like focal length, lens, camera,
Good old YouTube?
Yeah, YouTube University. I went down the rabbit hole.
It's free, baby.
I went down the rabbit hole.
Unless you're paying for a premium. No one's paying for premium.
Free. And I just did so much research and I was like, you know what? This is going to be crazy. Most people would never do this. But I traded in all my old like random gear.
Got a little fund.
And got a little bit of money. And I said, I'm going to save up the rest. And I ended up getting a Leica Q2. So for people that don't know, Leica's an incredible like legacy brand in the photography space. And it shouldn't be where you start. Like I had no right starting at that level. Like it's a level that's extremely high. But at the same time.
But if you can afford it, you can afford it. Well, why not?
Well, that's the thing. It was not just the affordability of like saving up and trading in, but it was also, I come from a design background. It's German engineering. A lot of the shit's handmade.
Yeah, it'll last.
It'll last like a lifetime. So I went with something that I felt could challenge me and allow me to create, I don't know.
And if you're going to learn something, why not learn something, right? Like the highest brand or a new system that can do so much more.
If you can. It's also totally fine if not. Like,
right.
And this is what I'll say for anyone that's like watching, like for the film photography side of things, because my Q2 was digital. But then I quickly switched to a hybrid of shooting film and digital. And for the first like 2 years of shooting street, every film shot I ever took, every 35 mil was on a point and shoot camera.
Right.
And that's not some crazy
It's easy. You go to Best Buy, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like you can pick up a point and shoot anywhere. So I just want to let people know you don't need to start at that level. Like that's just me being a little more established in my life, me being able to somehow justify spending that money.
And you've been around high-end productions. You kind of know why to take the better camera versus
sure.
Right.
But in all honesty, like what Canon does, what Sony does, what Fuji does, like
this podcast is shot on $400 cameras.
Yeah, there's literally nothing that any of these cameras can't do. So
1,000%.
at a certain point, you also have to tap into like, who are you as a creator and what represents you?
When we first started, we were shooting on the phone. We wanted to get 3 angles. We only had 2 cameras. We needed the third.
Nothing wrong with the phone.
Use what you need.
Yeah, man.
1,000%.
And the phones today, like you can shoot
iPhone 15,
like log
come on,
footage.
cut it out. Cut it out.
Yeah,
right?
it's crazy.
4K and all, right? Doesn't have to be super long, but it's high quality. All right, cool. So then how's that going for you now, right? You have exhibitions going on. I know you're doing events. You just did a shot of pod the other day, like an actual interview, talking about the ups and downs of what you're going through right now as a street photographer. So like, how is that for you? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it. It's the first time in a very long time, probably since high school, that I've created just for myself.
Yeah.
I've said this before in other
And
interviews.
the rewards are for you.
It's a reward for me. There's no deadlines, there's no budgets, there's no clients, and there's no expectations.
It's on your time.
It's on my time, and it allows me to reconnect with the world around me in a way that I was losing by being so busy doing all my other stuff. So being on the street, we all know life happens on the street. From the richest of the rich to the poorest of the poor, you have to be on the street at some point in your day. And that's what's so fascinating to me is that everything in the world intersects on the street. And if you're lucky enough with your camera to capture a
it.
moment, that moment never gets duplicated. And so there's these intersections of people that would never meet, people that come from different walks of life, people that dress differently, their careers are different, but yet they're taking up the same space in our city.
They're on the same bus, they're on the same train, they're at the same cafe,
and they're
Starbucks.
Exactly, and they're sharing the same energy that exists in our city. And
we all live the same lives, to some extent.
To some extent, and there's magic in that. And I realized that when I was so busy going from point A to point B, from meeting to meeting, work to work, job to job, I was missing everything that was in between. And like, that's when my light bulb moment went on for street photography, where it's like, this allows me to not only slow down, but it allows me to pay attention to things that I was taking for granted.
So now on the way to the meeting, snap a couple pics.
Exactly. Like I bring my camera to a lot of things that I wouldn't have never thought of before. And just wandering the street and meeting people, like sometimes I'll talk to people on the street, and those interactions are incredible, because once you get over the fear of like talking to a stranger or being like awkward in front of someone.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's a thing.
Because that's a thing with everybody, right? Even just talking to themselves on a camera is awkward.
Super awkward for me.
You know, you're snapping these photos. Are you asking for permission? Or are you just kind of capturing the moment as it happens? And are you, again, some people, you know, you go to a party and you want to capture the moment. People are too embarrassed. They're too cool to take their phone out and capture what's in front of them, because you may never live this moment again. Right. So how did you become comfortable doing that? You're comfortable now, obviously. Right.
For me, in the beginning, I will fully admit that I was scared. No shame in admitting I had fear of shooting people on the street. I think the first thing that I did was shoot like behind people, so no one knew I was taking a photo.
Shoulder.
Yeah, like that was the safest thing.
Yeah, but those are good too.
It was good, and then it transitioned into like, okay, there's a walkway, like a street scene. I'll stand on the edge of the sidewalk and I'll pretend almost like I'm shooting the scene versus the people,
and just capture the people in it.
And capturing people in it, and that was like a graduation for me to get to that. And then eventually you get to the point where you're like, well, that person looks really interesting. I either need to capture them in their moment, or I need to have a conversation, because they deserve to be captured, properly. And so now it's a hybrid. Like I would probably say like 70-80% of my stuff's candid, and maybe like 15-20%
produced a little bit.
Yeah, like not necessarily produced, but like I will have spoken to someone.
Yeah, beforehand
beforehand, just to make sure everyone's cool, and to let them know like why I'm doing it. Because a lot of people don't understand what street photography is as an art form. And there's so much beauty to be unfolded or uncovered on the street, but people don't realize it, just like I didn't before when I was so busy. But there's stories to be told. And I just feel like there's so much magic that happens. It would be crazy for me not to explore this version of life and art.
You're creative, but you still have to feed yourself.
Yeah.
So how do you turn, this passion project of yours to paying the bell bill that comes up every month, or whatever, that you have to, your expenses, right? How do you turn this into income?
It's a great question. This is a weird thing, and it's just been something that's always happened in my life, but I've approached everything from a passion standpoint first. And then money comes, and it's never failed. I will admit to everyone, this has never failed in my life. Now, I don't know if that's the same thing for everyone. I don't know if that's possible, but I will say it's been possible for me. And it happens in a sense of like, it's coming from an authentic place. I love what I do. I want to enjoy it. And then
people are receptive.
That's the key thing. People are receptive. So people know me from the design space. People might know me from like the event or One Love Teal space or whatever. But that doesn't mean you're gonna like mess with my street photography. Like street photography is definitely not the go-to thing for most people to be interested in. When you hang art in your house, if you hang art, it's like 99.9% not gonna be a street photo. So it's not like I approach street photography thinking this is my next way to make money. It was literally, this is my way to unplug from making money. How do I get away from making money?
And in return,
yeah,
it's crazy how it works.
Right? And I never intended it to make money. And it's interesting because now it does pay some bills.
Sure.
I don't treat it like a business per se, and I don't
Not yet.
not yet, and I don't actively pursue clients. That's not my goal. I'm still exploring what photography means to me and what I want to build. So I would say any money that's come from what I've done is just a byproduct of people being receptive and probably seeing my passion for
Right.
it.
And I'm not saying you're running away with the money. I mean, it's mean like how do you make an income for yourself? How do you pay for the expenses? How do you How do you make a buck off of this, man?
So like if
Somebody that wants to do this for, they don't want to have a 9 to 5. They want to be a professional street photographer. How do they make some money?
Okay, so I don't think you can be a professional street
That's not a
photographer
thing.
and make money.
That's not a thing.
No, I think you can be a professional artist, and over many years, that art form could pay your bills. But as a street photographer, nah, you're not going to be like it's not a career.
Why? Because there's not a market for it.
No one pays for it.
Got it.
Right? But that doesn't mean there aren't interesting ways that you can make money from street photography.
Yeah, Brett events or
Well, there's a million things. Like one, for example, could be photo books. Photo books are huge. Now, some people can make money off of it. Some people, it's a marketing opportunity to get your name out there. You don't make a lot of money. There's other things like gallery shows and exhibits, being an artist. But then if you flip into ways to use your skill set, and I've talked about this on my own channel, my YouTube channel, the BTS vibe of like shooting on set for TV, commercial, movies, essentially you're a fly on the wall.
Right.
It's the same vibe as when you're on the street. There's a perfect correlation between how you approach the street to how you would approach shooting BTS. And if you can get into those scenarios with production companies or music videos or whatever someone's shooting motion for, you could be the stills photographer.
True.
There's paychecks for that. And then it may not be happening on the street, but you're directly using the skill set you've acquired from street photography in another setting.
Right. True enough. So right now you're doing these photo walks.
Yeah.
Obviously part of this passion. People are they paying to be a part of this, or are they just signing up and then they're joining?
Yeah, so I do like a $5 donation.
Right.
Where at the end of the year we tally everything up and it gets donated to a charity.
Yeah.
But I don't technically make money from people. The way that I would ever make money from doing a photo walk would be if there's a sponsor involved, or if I received a grant, or if there's a budget from a partnership.
So you're heavy on collaboration. How do you even go about finding these sponsorships? Everyone talks about sponsors. We need sponsors. We need sponsors.
Yeah.
We need sponsors.
Totally.
We need someone to help us with these goddamn costs.
Yeah. Yo.
Like, how do you go? Is there a hub? Is there an online list to pick a sponsor? Can we start something like that?
There should
How
be.
can we get access to sponsors?
So there's a lot of different ways to access sponsors. One is
The government does its job a little bit in terms
they
of
have
helping
huge
out.
artist grants, like in Canada.
People don't know how to get them though, Brock.
Honestly, I've only ever got one,
Right.
and it was for $500. I'm thankful for it,
Right.
but it didn't.
How do you tap into it?
Yeah,
How
it's hard,
how does
man.
one tap into the government grants?
So okay,
Because there's a lot of money going on there, right?
Yeah, let's tackle both things. There's government grants, which most artists would probably benefit from working with a grant writer. Grant writers typically take a percentage of the grant if you get it, or there might be a small upfront fee. But those are the folks that get the grants. They know how to write them for you. They know the language. They know
might have a
what they're
relationship,
looking for.
yeah.
It's not. Grants aren't really relationship based because it's government, and there's a million people that have to like jury.
Well, that's a misconception because a lot of people think, getting a grant from the government, you got to know somebody.
At least from my experience and the people that I know that have received
I'm asking you
grants.
because you're one of the top guys in the sponsorship space getting, right? So you would know.
Sponsorship would be different than a grant.
True enough.
But from the grant side, I don't think you can know someone, at least in my experience, to get it. There's a pretty rigorous process you have to go through to apply for all the government grants and to get approval. And I've been turned down, just so everyone knows, I've been turned down a ton of times from grants. So I've only ever got one. Like I said, it was for $500, and it was for exhibition assistance. I'm thankful for it, but that's one route.
You're not relying on them.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
I would never rely on government money to make my art. That's a bonus if I get it. My art has to be coming from a place of me, and I have to be willing to put up my own money, my own time, my own resources, or call in favors. But from the sponsorship side, this is one thing I can also admit that I wish I was better at. I've actually never pitched myself. I've been very fortunate that any of the partnerships you see have been proposed to me based off of the work that I've produced. But that doesn't...
So would you say the past production of your work was the pitch in itself?
100%.
Right.
Yeah, me posting my work and sharing my work
There you go.
is what attracts people to say, hey, I might want to work with this guy.
Yeah. But they might be solid, like silent followers in the back, but they're
That's
watching.
That's it.
They're watching.
Like I've done so many partnerships with people I had no idea even knew who I was or
Right.
knew what I was doing.
Right.
So I would say I'm as an artist, I'm good at presenting my work, and people seem to be receptive to reach out. But that's not how you could live or pay your bills, right? That's a terrible way to like
Harp on and like rely on. Really,
yeah,
right?
I would never want to do that as my main thing. The main thing would be pitch yourself. So create a pitch deck or a media kit or something that highlights what you do, what you've done. If you need to include numbers for stats.
Do the digital media kits or the print media kits work better nowadays? Doesn't matter.
I think
depends on the
either or.
presentation.
Yeah, depends on the. If it's a cold email, it's got to be digital.
Yeah.
If you're lucky enough to get a meeting in person or grab a coffee with someone and you got a
something
printout, there's no harm in having a takeaway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So now that you've, you had this journey of starting grassroots to being in corporate now, you've made some money. What do you do in terms of investments? How do you make sure your money works for you in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question because us as creatives have no pension.
That's my point.
Right? We have no...
There's no security for 20 years from now unless you set yourself up.
And there's never been like... the most you can get away with in Canada is if you have a 9-to-5, or not even 9-to-5, if you get a T4 from some form of a job,
Right.
you collect...
EI or whatever.
you pay into CPP, Canadian Pension Plan, which you can access when you're older and you're retired. The other thing you can get is OAS, which is old age security. But if you look at the numbers, if you've maxed out your CPP payments and you've maxed out your OAS or whatever you're capable of getting, eligible for getting, like as of today, you're probably maxed out at close to $2,000 a month. That will not.
That's what CERB was giving everybody for a
Right?
little bit, right? So
That will
do
not-
they classify that as livable expense? Like nobody lives on $2,000 a month.
So the government says it's supposed to be a portion of what you're expected to live off of.
Right.
But in an economy like what we have today, where costs are insane,
double
inflation
that.
is insane, if you don't have savings or investments to couple with what the government
Something
eventually
coming
gives
in.
you, then you are going to be reliant on that $2,000, which means now you're living below the poverty line.
Right.
And you've potentially lived a great life or not, but ideally as a creative, you've made some money. But if you haven't invested your money or created other opportunities for your money to make you money, then you will literally be left with nothing.
Yeah.
And no one tells you that.
Right.
So for me, my whole...
That's what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm harping on. It's like, we're all creatives in some way, some form or fashion, right? We all make money, and some people squander it. Some people buy jewelry and go pop bottles or whatever the case is, buy that new car.
Yep.
But if you're not smart, then in 25 years, you're kind of like, what the F?
That's the thing. So like, I'm never a person to say don't experience life to its fullest because you don't know if tomorrow's going to happen.
1,000.
But I'm also at the same token saying I would rather take calculated risks than just risky business. So, and I'm also cool with living within my means. So a lot of people might not know this, but I lived with a roommate or roommates up until I was like 30, 31 years old.
Right.
Right? I moved out when I was 19. So I've been paying rent and living with roommates for like 10 plus years. But for folks that want to know like, how do you do it? Well, that was my cheat code. I was splitting rent. Right. My rent was
house
like,
hacking, they call it.
That was house hacking, I guess, if that's the thing. My rent back in the day, now obviously this won't equate to like what today is, but I mean, sharing a space with other people, my rent was like $650 a month.
Right.
If you want to
The
get
good old days.
Yeah, the good old days when I was younger. If you want to get a place in Toronto right now, is a one bedroom in the city. $2,500.
Easy.
That is like what, 5 or 6 times what I used to pay. So if I'm gonna tell people like my story and how I did certain things to be okay financially, I can't gloss over the fact that I didn't live a balling 20s and early 30s lifestyle.
Right.
Outside of my house, I did, because things were presented to me. But no, man, I lived cheap. I had
my day-to-day was cheap.
My day-to-day was cheap. I didn't own a car until I was like 28
And you're in the
years
city.
old.
Why? You don't need
Right?
one. You don't need one if you're in the city.
Yeah.
But if you're outside the city where I am, like you need a car to get in.
yeah.
You got to get out, right?
But for years, I was commuting to different jobs, and I would take the bus. I would take the subway. I would take another bus. Like that's part of your grind. That's part of the hustle, right? And all those things allowed me to save money, and not a lot of money because I was young. So your career wasn't like you weren't making big money.
Yeah, you're not making 90,000 at
No, my
21.
first paying job was Flow 93.5.
Right.
I went from intern to head of the department in like 9 months.
Yeah.
And I went from working for free when it was still legal to work for free for an internship.
Is it not legal anymore to do
No,
interns?
you can't do that.
So what, they got to pay you minimum at least?
Yeah, they got to pay you minimum wage.
Minimum's hiking up right now too.
It's like almost $17. But that was my first moment of going from working from free to getting a salary job.
Got you.
And at that point, I thought I'd made it, right? Like, oh my God, I'm
Yeah,
getting
no,
a
my
salary.
first salary job, I got a check for $4,000. I'm like, woo!
It's crazy,
I'm
right?
rich. I went on 2 trips.
So there you go. You lived it, but now
I'm like, all
what do
right,
you got?
cool, did it, done. Money's coming in. What are we putting it now?
Yeah.
Right?
So the thing for young people to think about is, where do you put it? Okay, if you have the ability to put it into real estate in terms of rental properties or whatever, that could be one avenue. But it's way harder now than it used to be.
to get in at least.
To get in, the upfront costs are crazy.
Yeah.
Building costs, builders are passing on the cost to consumers. And being a landlord in Ontario, the rules are stacked against you.
It's super risky.
Yeah.
Some people don't even want to be a landlord anymore. Right?
100%.
Because the tenants have too many rights and all these things, but we're not going to get into all that.
Yeah. It's just the reality of, you got to understand, if you're going to choose that as one of your investment paths, what are the risks and rewards that come with it?
Yeah.
Another one's obviously stock market. You can figure out what
And most
works.
recently, everybody kind of like got into the stocks because it became accessible to everybody.
Yeah.
Right. Which is thanks for technology, obviously.
Right.
Right.
So that's a thing, but like going into that blindly, like people that are like day trading, right? People lose tons of money doing that because they think it's easy.
They're watching that YouTube.
Right?
They're watching that YouTube thinking they can do it. And they're putting up $5,000.
Yeah. And then it's gone.
Yeah, it's gone.
Like you're essentially just betting.
Yeah.
So like
It is gambling at some point.
it is. And once again, earlier I said calculated risk. So my advice would be like, find either a financial advisor, talk to someone at your local branch,
Someone
if
that's
you have a
doing
bank
it at a
account.
high level.
Yeah, and just ask questions. Like before I ever had an accountant, I interviewed like 10 accountants because I didn't know what I was doing and I wanted to know what they were.
So that's beautiful. Right? How do you pick now? Now you're dating 10. How do you pick the one?
Well, man, they kind of.
What stood out to you?
So like one person presented, they were awesome, but they talked about their clients and I knew who their clients were. I'm like, I don't want someone talking about me to someone else.
Right.
You're X'd out.
Integrity.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Why are you talking about someone's business? I know that person. You don't know I know that person.
Right.
You're not getting hired. The next person.
That's a good gem right there, guys. You got to pick up on that.
Yeah,
Don't talk everybody else's business on the road. But anyways.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
The other thing would be the other people that I met with. There's people who understand your business, and then there's people that are just accountants. So you want to get someone who understands your business
specifically, right?
Because there's people who specialize in different things. And then because I was much younger and I never went to business school, I didn't understand the ins and outs of like what needed to happen. I wanted someone that I was comfortable asking questions, and they weren't going to feel like I was misusing their time or being rude or taking advantage of. They were willing to be like a mentor. So I ended up going with someone that I could ask the questions I needed.
Did you know this person, or that this is just you meeting them out of the
They came from like a
interviews?
referral,
Got
like
you.
a lot of them did.
Got it.
And that's kind of where like my journey of understanding how to use money as a business owner.
To make money.
Yeah, because think about this for a second. If you're a young creative and you're a photographer, you don't have a business set up, but you go buy that $3,000, $4,000 camera.
Waste.
You had to earn money at a job.
Talk about it.
And get taxed, right? Whatever that tax is, 10, 20, 30% from your salary, gone to the government. Now that money that's left over, you have gone to a store and you're paying that store, let's say $3,000 plus HST, 13%. You're getting taxed again. Now you've bought a tool that you can create work with. But guess what? You just paid $3,000 after all that tax. So it's going to account to much more than $3,000.
Probably $4,000.
Yeah, let's call it $4,000 that is no longer tax deductible because you do not have a business set up.
Yeah.
You just wasted your money. That's the stupidest move
All you have to do is set it up properly to still spend the same.
Still spend the same money, but open a business.
Yeah.
I would tell every young person that's a creative, open a business. Even if you don't make money for the first 3, 4, 5 years, at least
Establish it.
establish yourself, understand the pros and cons of spending money and how taxes work. Once again, asking an accountant, asking a financial advisor, talking to someone at the bank. No question's a dumb question. I asked a ton of ones that probably shouldn't have been asked, but I didn't know any better.
Right.
And that gets you to the point of saying, okay, now it makes way more sense. Why am I going to buy or lease this car on my own money if I can buy it or lease it through my company?
Right.
Why am I going to buy a new laptop with my own money?
Well, I could do it with the
If
company.
I can do, and then you take it a step further and say, well, should I have a small business loan? Should I use other people's money?
Well, now I can start to get a business loan because I'm showing I have an income.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Or your credit score. People don't think about their credit score. Like, man, there's so many things. I'm just passionate about the money stuff because it's
so am I.
it's a thing people don't talk about.
And it's super new. People are not talking about it enough. There's so many questions to be answered, and there's a lot of answers, but we don't know who to ask. Right?
Yeah.
Even having an accountant, you said you interviewed 10 of them to get to the one.
Yeah.
Right. That's essential to find the perfect one that understands your business, obviously, and then knows, maybe you should put it here versus put it there.
Exactly.
Right. To help me in the long run. I'm trying to save some money, man. I'm not trying to give all my money to these guys.
Right.
Bro.
Like at the end of the year, there's value in like if you have extra money, putting it into your RSP.
Right.
And if that lowers your income to the point of paying no tax, great. If it lowers your income so much so that you get a refund, even better.
You have to remember, it's still your money.
It's
You're
all
just
your money.
moving it from your left pocket to the right pocket.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of, that's how these big guys do it.
That's how
So
they just move
follow.
money.
Just move it around.
You just have to understand which ones make sense and why. Like RSPs, like you get taxed when you eventually remove the money. So it's almost like a tax deferral versus like an income generator, but it can create income.
Unless you're using it for something specific, like purchasing a home, you may not get taxed on it.
Right.
So there's certain things, again, speak to your accountant.
Yeah.
But find an accountant that can work for you.
Yeah.
Right?
So my whole thing for young people is figure out if you're going to do this, set up a business and might as well reap the rewards. And if it doesn't work out, cool, you dissolve and close the business.
And you can do this online, $200.
You can do it online. Sole proprietorship is super
A
cheap.
pair of Jordans, you can go set up a business right now.
Exactly. Cheaper.
Cheaper.
Business is like $60, $70.
Go set up a business, guys.
If you want to be incorporated, maybe $1,000, maybe $1,500.
Right, but you don't need that yet until you start making.
You don't need it.
Right?
And you also don't need an HST number until you make over $30,000 in Canada.
All these little things that, we just don't know.
Yeah.
And we should know these things.
We should.
They should be teaching these things in school.
Yeah.
But they're not. But anyways, that's a whole nother topic for another day.
Yeah.
Right? Brock, I appreciate you coming by. I could talk to you about all these things for hours. I think we're hitting like an hour now, so I don't want to hold you up.
Oh, good.
You know what? You're on a crazy journey, and I want to continue watching what you do next. I'm super excited. I get inspired every time you drop something. Like, yeah, look what this guy's doing right now. It's always something different. So I just appreciate you, sharing the space with you right now, man. I appreciate you coming out.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. Anything coming up next? What are you dropping next? What's the next exhibitions? What do you got?
2024, I got like 10 photo walks, community photo walks.
Where can they find that?
They can literally just go on either my Instagram or they can go on my website, which is bryan-brock.com/community. That's where all my community events happen. And you can join. I have a text chat, but all that info's on there. Essentially,
you're building a community for yourself right now.
Yeah, it's all like there's no way I'm going to win on my own. We got to do this together. So I include people in my journey, and I hope that they learn something. But I know I'm going to learn something too. So if they want to be a part of my photo walks, please join. I've got, like I said, like 10 happening between now, which is May, all the way up until October of 2024.
Yes, sir.
Definitely, probably have another photo gallery event or some form of like.
All right, well, so shoot me the invite, man. I'm there.
Yeah, I got you.
All right.